All right, guys, welcome to the Independent Creators Podcast. My name is Wes. I'm a comic book artist and illustrator, and today I have Chris from Home Brewed Comics. And Chris, can you give us a brief introduction?
My name's Chris. I'm the creator of the comic Crit, published under my company, Home Brewed Heroes. And we're currently on our 8th issue right now, running for this is our 4th year.
Okay. So how did this project start out? I've read a little bit about it, but you guys were playing like a Dungeons and Dragons game, and then it kind of evolved into a comic.
Yeah, so my friends and I used to play D&D now almost 15 years ago. It was like 2010, 2009 through 2011. We played like every Sunday night for about 2 years, and then we were living in a college town at the time. Everybody kind of went off, did their own thing, moved away, started families, that fun stuff. And 10 years later, I was working on an idea for a superhero D&D campaign, and we had always talked about it but never did it because superheroes were really hard because they're hard to balance. And so I just called the guys and I said, hey, I have this idea for superhero D&D. Would you guys want to play? And we all lived about an hour apart, so we coordinated about once a month, between work, family, kids, the whole thing. And we just started playing once a month, and the game was a lot of fun. After the first session, I kind of just sketched some things out, like what I thought the characters looked like, really, really, really rough sketches. And maybe 6 months after that, I had a drawing tablet that work gave me, and I never really drew before this. It was more like just random sketches. I wasn't really an artist. I could see something and make it look presentable but not good, being real. So I sat down. I just had a lot of time in my hands. I was working from home. It was late 2019, right before 2020. We had moved remote well before COVID. And so all my downtime, between phone calls, I just started sketching some stuff out. And I did about, I want to say, a 12 to 13 page book. And I brought it to them and I said, hey, this is something fun. And everybody thought it was cool. No big deal. My wife, though, she's a phenomenal artist. And when I showed it to her, she just kind of blew it off. She read the whole thing and gave it back to me. And she was like, oh, that's cool. And my wife and I, we've known each other for about 20 years. So it kind of hurt, having your best friend just hand you something and say, whatever, it's okay. So the next day I went out, I got an iPad. I started downloading classes on how to draw comic books, and I just asked her for feedback. And so really that was issue 1, and started off with me drawing a page, giving it to her and saying, what do you think? And her erasing half of it and saying it's wrong and having to go back and redo it. So that began my comic book journey, was just trying to create something that looked good and was presentable to my friends. And after a few months of messing with that, now we're well into 2020 by now, so I have a lot of free time. And my wife just sat with me half the day, showing me what I was doing wrong anatomically, what lighting sources should look like, all that fun stuff. And July of 2020, I finished the book. I put it on Kickstarter. Excuse me. I didn't even know what Kickstarter was. One of my players was like, hey, just do a Kickstarter. People throw stuff up there all the time and people just throw money at it. And that way you can get a colorist. Because I had just done, inks. I never colored anything. And it didn't go well. I didn't know what to ask for. I saw that, most people were asking for $1,500, $2,000 for a book. So I was like, I guess that's what you asked for. Again, no clue what I was doing. Just put it together. We got about 30 backers through. I actually made the Instagram the day I made the Kickstarter. And we got about 30 backers. It didn't fund. We made right at $750 in backing. But a friend of mine, he's independently wealthy. He saw me posting on Facebook that I was drawing a comic book, and he's like, "Hey, how much money do you need, to make this thing?" And I was like, "I really only need about $500. The colorist is only asking for about 500 to do it." And he said, "Well, hey, so I get this little message on Facebook that he's sending me $500. So he pays for it, and I get the colorist to do everything. About 2 weeks later, I get the book back and sent it off to print. And I contacted everybody that was on the Kickstarter, and I said, "Hey, I know it didn't fund, but I'd like to give you the book. You believed in it. I really appreciate that." I wrote everybody like a very heartfelt thank you for taking interest in something that I had no clue. Like I said, I had no social media presence. I had no background on Kickstarter. I've never created a comic book before in my life. And so those 30, 35 people wound up getting free books. Some of them were in other countries. I definitely lost some money in shipping. But I wanted to, it's never about the money. It was about just getting the story out there, because I love our story. I love our D&D campaign. It's so much fun. It's everyone that's close to me says, if you've ever seen the movie Tag, there's a group of guys that get together once a year and they do this big game of tag. It's like their thing. They've been doing it since they were kids. And everyone says this is our version of tag. It's, a bunch of grown men still getting together and just doing something that's a lot of fun for them. And everything that you read happens, in our game. It's happened, it's recorded. So that's what I started since day one. I did this more for myself. I never intended to use this for a comic book, but I recorded all the sessions so I could go back and listen to what we did, since there's a month in between games. So I could listen and see where we ended and what kind of transpired. And I just used those recordings to storyboard. So, for about a week or two before I start drawing, I go in and I load up whatever session it was, and I just listen. Okay, so how does it start off? Okay, I make some notes, key dialogue, key things that happen, the first little bit of it. And then I go and I draw, and then I come back and do the same thing throughout the whole book. And then when it's done, I again put the recording on while I'm lettering, and I just put all the dialogue where it's supposed to go, call the guys in and say, "Hey, let's read it. Let's clean it up a little bit." Because if you've ever played D&D, you know that some of that stuff should stay at the table.
Yeah.
And, that's just really, it's just been a snowball effect. Like I said, we're on our 7th book. We've cleared Kickstarters as high as I think $5,000 or $6,000 and backings. Average about 150 people back every book, which is phenomenal. We do really well at cons. We've got trade paperback out. Let's see, we've got an energy drink that we've made based on an energy drink that actually exists in the comic. We've got this guy right here. He's one of the familiars in the book, so we've got him. Like I said, it's kind of like taking a life of its own now, so it's really cool.
Yeah. I was looking at your main website, and I saw you guys have a fan wiki as well, right? So there's there's an active community that's around this comic, which is pretty cool, because it started off as a community project. It was just you guys hanging out, having fun playing Dungeons and Dragons, probably drinking, right? just
Yeah.
And then it's almost like that community just continued to expand. The more it is that you, in a sense, brought people into what you were doing. So you said in the first Kickstarter, you didn't know what you were doing, and you just put something up, and then you followed up with with the original backers, which I'm sure those people have continued to come back and back what you're doing now. But what so what did you do differently from the second one than you did from the first? Was that when you started building like a website, or did you just make another comic, and then because you had given those comics to those people, then they were more likely to support the next one you did?
I really just started connecting with people. Again, COVID had just hit, and summer of 20. So I moved in this house 2020. So right around, actually, it was September of 2020. I launched the second book. I actually had COVID when I launched the book. I had been working on issue 2 well before I even shipped issue 1. While we were waiting for the print to come back, I just started drawing and getting it done. And I remember launching the second Kickstarter. So in that time period, I built the Instagram. I think we had over 1,000 followers. I had a few close friends on Instagram that I had made, other creators, and I wanted to do this live launch. I hadn't seen one. I thought, hey, let's do a live launch, lots of energy around it. We'll get a few guys on Instagram Live, and we'll do that. Again, I had COVID, and I was very, very sick leading up to this. I had done a few every Wednesday, I think, leading up to Wednesday, Thursday, I did an Instagram Live to promote the Kickstarter that was coming up. And then the day of, I went to launch, and I didn't realize that I hadn't actually submitted everything to Kickstarter, so it wasn't approved. Again, making mistakes. And so I had to delay the Kickstarter by 48 hours. And I remember coming back to launch it and just being so sick, sitting in my chair, talking to people, not even knowing what was going on because I had COVID really, really bad. And I think we funded in under 24 hours. I think I only asked for like $750 on that one just to pay for the colorist, because I flatted that book. I just had somebody that came in and put like shadows, details, things that I couldn't do yet. And so, went and did that, put that book out. That book like triple funded. It did really, really well. I think I asked, like I said, maybe like 500, 750. I have to go back. And I think we wound up getting, I know we triple funded. So we probably ended right around $2,000. And I went back to all those backers and I said, hey, since we did so well, issue 3, I had enough money to pay for the colorist on issue 3. So I want to say 6 months later, I went to Indiegogo. I didn't want to go back to Kickstarter because I promised all the Kickstarter people they would get issue 3. I went to Indiegogo. I had 2 covers done, 2 connecting covers. So there's a heroes and a villains cover for issue 3. And we went to Indiegogo with it. And a friend of mine actually redid that garbage issue that I did my wife said was garbage. A friend of mine in Australia came in and said, hey, I want to redo that initial, issue 0 that you have. And so, because I had given him my old drawing tablet, I found out one of my friends was drawing on a phone, and I said, hey, like, I have this tablet that I started drawing on. I have no use for it. It's better than your phone. Like, I have an iPad. So I sent him the tablet, and as a thank you, he redrew those 12 pages. We turned them into 18. So I put that on Kickstarter or on Indiegogo with issue 3. So you get issue 3 and issue 0 as a bundle. And most of my Kickstarter backers from issue 2 actually backed issue 3. So they got both covers. I was like, hey, I promised you a free book. You're still going to get a free book. And that did double its goal as well. So we went back with issue 4 about a year later, and that one just blew me out of the water, because I think that one we finally broke like 125 backers. Really started getting more traction around the time of issue 4, which was 2022, 2023. And it was 2022, because I put out, I think in a matter of a year and a half, almost 2 years, we put out almost 4 books. And it like I said, it kept being this snowball effect. So more people were coming in and checking it out. We put out the beta version of the game we were working on, and I started doing conventions, which got more attention. And man, the amount of promotion we do is really, at this point, it's just, I guess I would say it's normal for me to be doing stuff like this. I get a lot of people asking me, hey, like, I want to hear about your story, because I guess it is kind of unique that we don't really have a writing process. You know, that's one thing I hear kind of consistently at cons or talking to other creators. Um, the writing process really isn't there. It's recorded. I don't hire an editor. I don't. We proofread it and we do double check some stuff, because if you've played D&D, you know there's going to be a storyline that you want to be in there, and then your players are like, "We don't care about that. We're going this way." And so you introduce a character or a storyline that really doesn't develop into anything, and so we will go in and edit that out, so you never get to see that, because there's no point. I think there was like some kind of underground city I created, and I was like, hey, it's cool. Like, you have to have this special key, and then you get in, and it's all these magical things. And they wound up throwing the key away and saying, we don't want to do that. So just never even introduced that piece. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a lot of fun just even remembering some of the stuff that we've done.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
It's such a nostalgic part for me, because it's just me and my friends. Like, every time somebody says they really like this part of the book, or they'll be attached to a character from the book, I get to go tell my friends, hey, this guy really likes your character. You know, there's a kid that did a YouTube video, and he loved one of the characters so much, and I sent it to my friend, and I was like, hey, he really loves your character. And like, how cool is that? You know, like, your D&D character is now some kid's favorite, you know, comic character. And you know, most of us have kids too, so one of the players, he got to show the comic to his kids, and he's like, hey, look, it's your dad, he's a superhero. You know, those are kind of things that just make it so much fun for me. And I get to meet so many cool people too. So a lot of people have reached out and said, hey, you know, I'd like to do a cover for you. Or issue 6 was the first issue I colored, and that was mainly because, you know, we're all suffering from inflation and other things across the world, you know, just being real. You know, I had lost one of my jobs, and my wife was like, hey, we can't afford to pay up front for a colorist. And I said, well, I'd really like to try and color my own book. So with issue 6, I did the whole thing. And I can't do that again because it took me a whole year. It took 3,000 hours for me to do issue 6. From drawing to coloring, because I had to learn how to color. So I had never colored a book. I'd flatted one, but I never did the coloring. And I'm very particular, if someone's going to pay for the product, I want to give them the best I possibly can. And so I took classes with a friend of mine who's really, really good, Robert Nix. He got online and showed me some stuff. And I just worked with a whole bunch of artists that I really appreciated. And I said, hey, like, I'm really trying to color my own book. I'd like some help. I threw some money at them, like, show me what to do so I can, give everybody a really good product. And I'm really proud of how that book came out. But I'm not proud of how long it took. So with this next issue, a guy who does some cover work for me, I reached out to him and I said, hey, would you like to be a partner on the book moving forward? Because he's done a lot of covers for me and we talk almost every day. He's a really good friend of mine now. And I know he's trying to get more work and more exposure. And I said, hey, like, you'll get part of the Kickstarter. You'll get any characters we create. You can have final say on designs. You can even create your own character. And it's worked out really well. We mesh really well. I love his color style. It's very 90s. If you can see my back wall here, I'm a huge 90s comics fan. I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s. So, I love that old style of comic coloring. And so with this next issue and moving forward, Lewis will be doing the colors, which is really cool to have a partner. Because I'm sure once you get into the community, you see people that have these big groups working with them. And this entire time, it's just been me. Me drawing, me doing some colors, getting someone else to come in and maybe doing my shading, stuff like that. So we're growing, which is a lot of fun for me because, again, this is something that just started as a D&D campaign at a table. And now it's energy drinks and stuffed animals and Comic-Cons and all that stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
we have a video game
Yeah.
character too now. Yeah, there's a I keep that we've been working with a guy on that I met through Facebook, my friend Aries, and really cool
Wait,
guy
Harry?
just messaged me one day. Aries, the artist, on
Yeah.
Facebook.
I
Yeah,
know.
so he just messaged me, was like, hey, like, do you want to work on this indie game with me? And of course, so we have Spectre and Samedi the cat that are going to be in that, and that's really cool to kind of see them come to life.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's like the best part about indie comics is there's so many things that just can happen. You meet the
Mhm.
right person, you talk, like, you just you mesh well, and all of a sudden another door opens, and now you're working on a new project. I'm actually about to start lettering another book for somebody else because I do all the lettering too. Um, Everything that can be done by me, I try to do myself. Um,
Yeah.
that way we can put more money back into the book so we can get cool things like stuffed animals and energy drinks. Because I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
the energy drinks were not cheap.
So what is the production cost for your book? I mean, like you said, okay, so in the first one you had 30 people, and then it kind of snowballed from there. Can I ask, like, what is the production cost for your books, and how are you getting them to people? Like, how are you fulfilling that?
So, God, I'd have to go and look at all my tax forms.
Yeah.
um, I know I've spent more money than I've made.
Mm.
My wife will tell you that one. um, but on average, I mean, the coloring, if I haven't done it myself or worked with a partner, our books run between 28 32 pages. So we're looking at about anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 for colors. Printing, I probably spend about 1,000 to 1,500 on printing, depending. But I always over order because I do cons as well. So I like to have a backlog of books. So I keep a short box with all my books. So I always have at least 10 copies of every book. Um, that way, if I need to go set up, I can. We get orders on the website too. We get at least, I sell 3 to 4 sets of those books a month if I'm not promoting. If I am promoting, that'll double. There was one month where I actually sold, I think, 15 sets, like 0 through 6, on our website, which was really cool. So keeping those on hand is important. Um, Trying to, like, the stuffed animals were expensive. That cost me about $2,000. The energy drinks were about 1,500. Um, but on average, I probably spend around $3,000 a book if I were to just have an estimated cost. About 3,000.
And you're
That's
talking
with
you're
colors,
talking
printing, shipping. What's that?
okay. So but that when you say colors, you mean paying a colorist. But in terms of just the shipping and the fulfillment side of it, that would still be about 3,000, or be
No, that's with everything. Every book cost me right around, I'd say, again, I'd have to go look, um,
oh,
about 3,000. Now, shipping can get more expensive if you have a lot of overseas, which
mhm.
that can be tough. Um, we have, because of my job, I get really good deals on shipping because we ship quite a bit. So I just use our account, which does get me some discounts, but not as much as I'd like sometimes. Um, Really, the printing cost, that's quite a bit because the books are, like I said, 20 to 32 pages, which is, and I don't like to do cheap paper. I like the high gloss stuff, and we do a lot of foil covers. Actually, the last one I did, issue 6, had actual aluminum. I did aluminum covers too,
Nice. That's
and
cool.
those were almost $12 a book to print. So those were pretty costly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I've done some research. I'm actually in Thailand right now, and I've done some research on getting books printed out here, and it's definitely not $10 or $12 a book. However, I have no idea what the shipping cost would be. I think the shipping cost would be pretty insane. Just sending something back to the States is like ridiculously expensive.
So I had a friend of mine from Australia that did a Kickstarter, and we what what I had him do was use a US based printer, and
Hmm.
then they sent everything to me, and I wound up just packaging and shipping it for him as a favor.
Hmm.
So if you can make some friends in the States that are willing to help you out, he sent me all the money. He paid the printer, and then what I did was kind of get an estimate of what the printing would cost or the shipping,
Yeah.
and he would just go in, to USPS, and he would just pay for it. So all I had to do is really the packaging side of things, which he didn't have a huge Kickstarter. It was still about 60 packages I wound up shipping, but he
Yeah.
saved quite a bit of money, you know, tossing me about 20-30 bucks so I could package everything and ship it out for him. So
Yeah. So I was thinking that there's got to be some way that you can do. You have the books printed in somewhere like Thailand where it's relatively cheap compared to the States, and then have them all bundled and sent to like a something like an Amazon warehouse, something like that, and then from there have them distributed. Is that
yeah, you can do like
something that
backer kit.
backer
Like
kit?
yeah, backer kit. They're a fulfillment service. Um,
Okay.
yeah, there's multiple fulfillment services out there that you can
Uh-huh.
use that will help you, ship, especially if you have like quite a bit in the US. Um,
Hmm.
what again, if you use a US based printer, just have that printer ship everything to them, and then what they'll do is they'll separate it and ship it for you, which is arguably much cheaper than trying to do it yourself because international shipping cost is absurd.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Okay. Cool, man. Yeah. What you were talking about earlier about not having like really a writing process, I think that was what interested me the most about what you guys do, is that it seemed to like all happen organically. And I feel like if you're creative and you're watching this interview, that's something to learn from, because we often think that we need to sit down and we need to be, like, I don't know, the next great novelist or something like that. But what y'all guys do is so unique because there isn't that process that is like, there's not that traditional process. Like I said, it's something that just kind of outgrew from the game it is that y'all guys are playing. Which I noticed that as well. Whenever I've only played D&D a couple of times, but it does it does ignite your imagination. It does get you thinking in a creative way that maybe sometimes when you sit down with a laptop and you try to write a good story, you get this writer's block because you have this expectation of trying to create something that's good, as opposed to just having fun with your friends.
And you get different writing too, so everyone plays their own character, everyone writes their own story.
Yeah.
You have a group of writers instead of just one, and it's collaborative, it's organic. And what I think I enjoy the most is that it's really easy to write the characters because they're my friends. I know their personalities. Their characters are heavily based on their own personas as it is. So, when I'm drawing the characters, I picture my friends doing this stuff, and it makes it very easy for me to figure out how this character would act in the situation, because you listen and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk over here and shoot this guy or whatever. I'm going to throw a grenade in there, or I'm going to punch this. Like you have the verbal aspect of it, but then I'll use Boulder as an example. My friend Terrell, I've known him 15 years, and we lived together for about 3 years. So I know him like very, very well. Uh, I know during a conversation if he's going to smile, if he's going to roll his eyes, if he's going to snicker, So when I'm drawing and there's a piece in there and I'm listening to it and I hear him, I'm like, okay, he's smiling there, or that's him in a pouty face, because he's very expressive. He's just a very expressive human to begin with. And so when I draw him, I get to be very expressive with the character as well. And Caliber, which is my friend Brad, he talks with his hands a lot. So when I draw him, I have a lot of hand movements. And Spectre is he's like the outsider of our group. He was actually in a different D&D campaign than these guys. He had never met them. And I just said, hey, why don't you come join this campaign with us? And so even in the book, you kind of feel that he's not as close with everyone because of how he acts. He's always going off and doing his own thing. And the other guy's like, hey, like, why don't you come with us? Because every time you go off on your own, something bad happens. But he always does that because he's also the youngest guy in the group. So sometimes it like seemed, from outsiders' perspective, it's always like, oh, he's got something to prove because he's not like part of the group. So he's trying to show that he's an optimal player by being able to handle a situation on his own. When really, usually he has to come. Like sometimes he was able to get through it, but it's like he always walked into the worst parts of the campaign that I built by himself. and there's just so many times where I almost kill him because he's by himself. And so he has to like run away or teleport or do something to get away from everything. And then the guys have to come save him. And then you have, Kid who knew me and he knew Brad from another game, but he didn't know the rest of the guys. So when he joined, you can feel like he's trying to figure out what his place is as well. And I just think all of that's really cool because if you were just to write the story, you would have to figure out how to make that feel unique and how to make that feel like real. And because we've recorded it and they've actually acted this stuff out and role played it, it's very easy for me to draw that and put that in the book and give each character their own personality. I think that's like one of the biggest reviews that we've gotten is you can tell that these are real people because they all have unique personalities. And there's 5 or 6 characters in the book. So being able to create 5 or 6 unique personalities out the gate in a comic, especially indie, can be tough. For a writer, it's hard enough to write one good character, let alone 5 or 6. So I think that's the cool part is you get all these unique characters. And one of the best questions I think I've gotten, somebody read issue 6 and they shot me a message and they said, hey, this is based on a D&D campaign, right? I said, yeah, everything you read happened, was a choice made by by a player, or I rolled the dice and that's how it landed. He said, so somebody actively chose to leave the cat, the owl, and the lizard in charge of the coffee shop. I said, yes, that really happened. They said, hey, we're going to leave the animals in charge of the coffee shop and we're going to go fight the big giant robot. And he said, that's the D&D campaign right there. Yeah. And that just made me happy. Like someone's reading it and going, I would have a campaign that looked like that. That's some of the cool stuff is D&D players saying this plays just like my campaign.
Yeah, that's interesting too, that it's like the exact opposite of what you hear about like a writer's room, right? Like you look at like a studio that has a writer's room and it's basically like everybody trying to everything gets committed to death. You look at like so much of the big media stuff now that just gets committed to death or focus group to death, and so it's interesting that you have something that comes together so easily from a group of people like that. That's not something that I would have expected. So you guys have another Kickstarter coming up. Like, what's going on now?
So for June, I'm launching late June. I haven't set the date yet. We are right at, I think, 15, 16 pages done. And my work just got a lot less. So I will be able to fly through the rest of those pages really quick. So I think Lewis and I spoke, and late June sounds about the best time frame. So that way we'll wrap up mid-July. That'll give me 2 weeks after that. So that way we can really send out to the printer in August and fulfill in September.
Nice. Okay, cool, man. So if anybody wants to check out your stuff, I'm going to include the links in the description box, but I guess they just look up crit.com. What's your
Um,
go-to?
so you can go to homebrewedcomics.com. That's probably the easiest. Or if you're on Instagram, Homebrewed Comics, that's me. Um, I post. I try to post daily because the Instagram algorithm hates you if you don't. Um, but I have a life outside Instagram too. So sometimes I get quiet for a few days. Generally, after a Kickstarter is over, I shut social media down because when you're running a Kickstarter, it's like every day you're posting, every day you're on a live, every day you're on a YouTube show. You're um, exhausting all of the energy you can to get eyes on the project. So I didn't generally just shut, social media down for about a week. Um, you wouldn't know it, but I really am like I have bad social anxiety. So having to put yourself out there so much can really drain that battery. And then I come back and do all the, post campaign stuff. But we do have a couple cons coming up. I think still waiting to hear back, but I'm pretty sure we got into Heroes Con this year. So we'll be down in North Carolina for Heroes Con. And I just got accepted to Atlantic Con, which is like their first year, and that's at Virginia Beach. So that should be fun. A few of my friends got into that as well. So be traveling up there for that. And I think those are the only two that I have on the books right now. Um, we're doing an in-store signing May 1st in South Carolina, and I'm setting another one up for my hometown in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So trying to stay busy in community as well, not just other states and Instagram, trying to get that local community built too.
Cool, man. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to include all the descriptions all the links in the description box for anybody who wants to check out Chris's stuff. And I'll go ahead and end the recording, and we'll chat for a couple minutes afterwards. But thank you for coming on and telling me about your process. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Very cool. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for watching.